You can't hit a target without one. Episode 22. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe S.M.A.R.T. Hello and welcome to another episode of Profit with Law. I am Moshe S.M.A.R.T, your host, and I am super excited for this episode because goal setting, which is the topic of this episode, is one of my favorite things to do. It's when I get a chance to dream, think big, think above and beyond the practicality and the reality of the situation that I'm in, and think about the future and what the future can bring. And my family just returned from a vacation. We took a cruise out of New York, went down to Bermuda and Grand Turk, and came back. And it was 8 days of me being unplugged and away. And it really gave me a chance to reflect on the work that I'm doing and what is my plan going forward. I encourage my clients to do quarterly goal planning, quarterly planning every 90 days, and annual planning as well. But I don't like annual planning because so many things change throughout the year. So annual planning is important to do just to give yourself the big picture. But the 90-day slice of the pie, if you slice the year into 4 sections, is a nice time frame to actually be able to get momentum, get something done, make something happen, and at the end of the 90 days, you can see, did I hit the goal? Did I not hit the goal? Where are we? And then you can work on setting the intention for the next 90 days. So as I go into the details of this episode, I want to take a step back and not assume that anybody listening to this understands goal setting, why it's important, and I'm going to assume that many of you listening are not doing this. Goal setting is probably the number one factor that will drive the growth of your law firm. And if I had to pick one thing that you can do, one action that you can do consistently to really make a difference, take yourself out of the plateau that you're in or the funk that you're in and get yourself moving in the right direction, it would be doing this exercise. So if you think, oh, I already know this, please do me a favor, keep those headphones in, keep listening wherever you are, and listen carefully to the information on this session, because it took me a long time to really understand and comprehend what I'm going to share with you, and I'm hoping to relay it in a way that you really get it and you can take it and put it into action and run with it. So right now at the beginning of July, we're at the beginning of Q3 of 2019, and this is potentially for you a clean slate to start fresh and start with a new desire, reinvigorated to get going. So what is a goal? If you do a Google search and search up goals, one of the first things that you're going to find is something called the S.M.A.R.T goal. And S.M.A.R.T is an acronym that stands for, and there's actually differing opinions of what it stands for, but I'm going to use one of them: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And what that means is that when you set a goal, you can't set a goal if it's not specific. So, for example, we'll use weight loss as an example because it's the easiest one to use. I'm 250 pounds. I want to lose a certain amount of weight. If I just say I want to lose weight, that's not specific. It needs to be something that is able to clearly articulate what it is I'm trying to achieve. So I have to say that I am going to lose X number of pounds, right? The next one is measurable, which is the same concept, except that I can say that I specifically want to lose half of my body weight. But if I don't weigh myself before I start, then there's no way to measure that. And therefore, I'll never know if I lost half of my body weight. So it needs to be measurable in that there's a metric that can be used to identify whether or not you've achieved that goal. Attainable, it means that it needs to be something that is, and some people use the R for realistic. So, but that's why I use the one that's relevant. But attainable is basically saying that this goal is able to be attained. I haven't shot for the moon and set myself up for failure because there's just no way I can achieve the goal. And I'm going to talk about attainable because that's the part of this that I do not like. Relevant means that it needs to be relevant to whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. So if I'm trying to lose weight and I say I want to lose weight and therefore I am going to measure how many miles I drive in my car, that's not really a relevant goal, how many miles I drive for my weight loss. It might be relevant if I'm walking instead of driving, but it's really not the right way to measure that progress and that goal. And timely, it just needs to be in a specific amount of time. So I can't say, if I say I have a goal to lose 65 pounds, but I don't put an end date on it, then I'm perpetually trying to achieve that goal, which defeats the purpose of the goal because the goal is supposed to be a motivator to get there, right? Which we're going to talk about. Why, what is a goal? What's the purpose of it? But let me talk about attainable for a second, because this is the part that I took for granted, and I've since learned might not be the best way to look at this. When you look at the word attainable in the SMART goal, it's telling you that you should only set a goal that you think you can hit. And what that does is it sets you up for playing small. And when you play small, you're not going to make the impact in your growth that you are trying to. So here's an example. Let's say that this past quarter in Q2, you did $50,000 in revenue in Q2. If you are trying to make it attainable, then you say, okay, if I did 50,000 in Q2, what percentage can I do more than 50,000 and be happy with my results? I'm going to go for 20% or 25%, right? So then your new goal is only going to be 60,000, 65,000 for the next quarter. That's playing small because you have so much potential in 90 days to make a massive change in the results that you had from Q2 and make Q3 that much better. So if instead you say my goal for Q3 is 150,000 in revenue, now you have to look at the quarter in a whole new perspective. Now you have to look and say, okay, if I want to bring in 150,000 in revenue, what does that mean? How many clients do I need to bring in? Do I need to, and suddenly you start asking questions that you would have never asked before. Should I raise my prices? Should I add another package? Should I raise my hourly rates? Should I eliminate some of the clients who are tying us up and keeping us from taking on new business because we're busy with them and they're not so lucrative? These questions you would never have asked if you stuck to the safe goal. But now that your goal is significantly larger, now that your goal is reaching, some people call it a reach goal. Now that your goal is reaching for something that does not seem attainable, that's when you start to ask the questions that you need to ask to start to take real momentum and real action in your law firm, in your business. So I have some very strong feelings in this area, and I didn't have them initially. I was educated. By my coach, and I'm very open about who I work with. So James Wedmore from the Mind Your Business podcast. I encourage you to listen to that podcast. I've mentioned it here on the show before, but he taught me how to set good, better, best goals. And I'm going to share that with you today because it's so powerful and it works so freaking well to get you moving in the right direction. But before I get there, I want to talk about one more point of the goal, and that is, what is the point of a goal? So if you have, let's say that you decide that you want to take a trip. If you don't decide where you're going on the trip, then you can essentially get in your car and drive out of your block and make 4 right turns and end up in front of your house and just keep doing that in repetition for the next week, and you will have taken a week-long road trip. But you will have never left anywhere. You would have never left your home. You'd always be in the vicinity of your house the entire time. Whereas if you said, I would like to drive to Miami, Florida from New York City, now you have set a destination of where you are trying to go, and you're going to drive in the general direction of Miami, Florida. Whether you reach there or not depends on whether you took the right turns and went on the right highways in order to make it within the time frame you wanted to get there. But at least you have a place that you're aiming to achieve, your place that you're aiming to arrive at, and that is your destination. So the point of having a goal is not necessarily to hit it. So if I set out to drive towards Miami and I never reached Miami, hopefully at least I went in the direction of Miami and got at somewhere along my journey towards there. But the purpose of choosing Miami was to have a place that I am aiming to arrive at. The purpose of a goal is not to hit the goal. The purpose of the goal is to aim at it. If you think about a target, right? A target has a bullseye, then it has a concentric circle around it, and then another circle around that. And if you hit anywhere in any of those circles, you've achieved something, right? You've hit the target, even though you did not get the bullseye. So even if you aim for the target and you miss the bullseye, you still were successful in hitting something. And that's the idea. That is exactly what we are trying to achieve when we talk about goals and we talk about goal setting. The purpose of a goal is that you now have something that you are trying to aim for. You have a destination you're trying to reach. And once you have a destination that you're trying to reach, the next step is that you need to create a route to get there. If I am leaving New York City going to Florida, it would behoove me to open a map and figure out what is the best and most likely way for me to get there within the time frame of the 1 week that I gave myself. When you set a goal for the next 90 days, you now have a job to figure out what is the best steps that I can take to make that goal a possibility in the next 90 days, which might mean that you have to rethink things in your business. If the goal is a revenue goal and your current marketing plan is not going to get you that revenue goal, then you have to go back to the drawing board and rethink your marketing strategy. And maybe it's time for something new. Or if you have a salesman who simply can't close that amount of business, then maybe you need another salesman. Or if you have the right volume of clients coming in, but it's just not generating the revenue necessary and you're full, then maybe it's time to raise your prices. So you have to start looking at these things as the GPS for your business, the GPS for your law firm. How am I going to get to this destination that I'm setting for myself? So how do you set a goal? Well, in order to set a goal, you have to understand what type of goal you're trying to set. And the first thing to understand is that you have 2 types of goals. One goal is an activity goal, and the second is a results goal. Now, if you think about it, what does the word results mean? The word results means that it's the result of an action. So you can't control the result of your action. You can only take the action. The result is hopefully the byproduct that you expected by taking the action, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. For example, if I know that every 10 phone calls I get on, I close 5 clients. I have a 50% close rate when I get on the phone. Well, then the only action I can take to achieve my goal, let's say my goal is to close 5 clients, the only action I can control is getting on the phone with 10 people. Now, it's possible that I can get 10 no's in a row, and I did not achieve my result that I was trying to achieve, but I still took the action necessary. So my activity goal was 10 phone calls. My results goal was 5 closes, but I got 0 closes instead of 5. However, had I continued and had I gone 20 phone calls or 30 phone calls, at some point I would have got back to my average. So maybe the first 10 were no's, but maybe the next 10 were yeses. If I never took the next 10 actions, if I never took the next 10 calls, there's no way I would ever achieve the result desired. Now, you can't know for certain what the results are going to be, which is why the only thing that we can control is the action that we take. So that's why it's so important to set both goals when you're setting goals. You want a results goal. You want a number, something measurable you can aim for that you can say, I achieved something, but at the same time, that is a result of an action or a series of actions. So our job is to go back and define what those actions are and make sure that we're taking those actions. So there's 2 different things we're measuring when we're setting goals. One is the actions required, and the second is the results desired. And both of those are equally important. As a matter of fact, the action is more important than the results because the results are going to come or they're not going to come. However, the results is important because we can tweak our actions. So if I did 10 calls and I got 0 closes and I wanted 5, I can choose to add 10 more calls to that goal. I could say that goal wasn't big enough. I need to add 10 more calls to try to get my result of 5, right? So that's why the results is so important as well, because it allows you to alter the actions you're doing dependent on the results you're getting. Now, what are some of the things that we can set goals for? Well, the easy one is revenue, right? You can set a goal for top line, for revenue numbers. You can also set a goal for profit, which I like to do, especially with anybody who's implementing profit first. You have a separate profit account. Why not have a goal for profit? It should be that set percentage of revenue, so those 2 goals should go hand in hand, but why not set a goal for profit? Then you have a new game to play, because if you didn't hit your revenue number, maybe you can decrease your expenses and still hit your profit number, and then you've accomplished what you were trying to accomplish as far as what you personally are getting out of the firm. But goals are not just your top line revenue or your bottom line profit. Goals can be set for every team member in the firm. Every person has a job function, and every person can improve in the function that they fill. So your job as a leader, your job as the law firm owner, is to make the goal-setting process not just something that you do at home on the weekend and now you know where you're headed with the firm. Your job in the goal-setting process is to involve everybody in the firm in that process and use the trickle-down effect to now set goals for everyone involved. So here's how the goals work, and then I'll go back to how do you do that with all the people involved. When you set a goal, you want to choose a good, better, best goal. That's 3 separate goals, right? And the way that the easiest way to do this is to start with the best and then work your way backwards. So you start with the best, you go to the good, and you put the better in between. So here's how that works. The best goal is like this. If you were to close your eyes and say, okay, every star has lined up perfectly, all of the possible things that could go wrong did not happen, everything went exactly as planned, what is the best outcome that you would like to have happen for the next quarter? So let's say in our previous example, the law firm generated $50,000 in revenue in Q2. Maybe I want to earn $1 million in revenue for the year, or be on track to $1 million. So maybe I want to hit that $250,000 number in a quarter. So my best number might be $250K. Now, oh my gosh, Moshe, that is a $200,000 jump over 50,000. That's like, a crazy, crazy thing to expect to have happen. Well, you know what? The purpose of the best goal is not to hit it. The purpose of the best goal is to aim at it. What happens if you aim for 250 and your next goal, your better goal was 100, for example, which we'll get to that in a second. What if you aimed for 250 and your better goal was 100 and you got to 150 or 175? Are you going to be upset? Or are you going to be ecstatic that you went from 50,000 the previous quarter to 175 in this quarter? So as soon as you understand that the purpose of the goal is to aim for it, and if you don't hit it, that's okay, that's when you unleash the real power of goal setting, because that's when you finally get comfortable with the uncomfortable. You finally get comfortable to choose a number that otherwise would be extremely difficult for you to even put on paper or say publicly to somebody. You need to be able to stand up in front of your team, in front of your people, and that could just be you, but you need to be able to stand up in front of your team and say, last quarter we generated 50,000 in revenue. Next quarter we're aiming for 250,000, and they have to be on board. So you have to really get comfortable with this goal setting process to be able to have all of the people on your team pulling in the same direction as you. So that's how you choose the best goal. Then we go to the lowest. We go to the good goal. What would you feel is the bare minimum that you can achieve in Q3 where you would be happy with the growth of your firm? And this is probably the safe goal that you would have chosen had we not introduced this whole idea of good, better, best to you. So in our example, we might choose 65,000, 75,000 as our good goal, which is at least let's maintain the status quo and make an incremental improvement on the status quo. That's the good goal. Now, the better goal is that middle of the road number. It's not usually split right in the middle between the good and the best, but again, these are all concoctions that you create, so you can do whatever you want. But in this example, if I have a goal of 75,000 as my good and I have a goal of 250,000 as my best, I would probably do 125 or 150. Probably 125 is my better goal. So now, if I hit 125, I've done better than the basic barometer I had created. I've also made an incremental leap towards that best goal, and now the next quarter we can do this again, and this time incrementally increase. Before you know it, that best goal is getting hit. It might not be hit in the next quarter, but it's getting hit. So this is a really, really powerful way to set goals and to look at goal setting. So now let's go back to how do you do this for your team. So my example I've given was at the revenue level, and I've basically given you the examples of how to create the good, better, best. As far as your action goals, before I get to the team, just one step back. As far as your activity goals, so let's say that our revenue goal was 250,000. I have to look at the 250,000 and say, okay, what activities are required in order to get 250,000 in revenue? So let's make this simple. Let's say that every client we bring on is $10,000. So that means we need to bring on 25 clients to get 250,000 in a quarter, which means that we have to bring on, 8 and change clients a month. So I have to bring on 8 clients a month. So in order to bring on 8 clients a month, if I have a 50% close rate on calls, I need to do 16 calls a month. Well, we don't want to set ourselves up for failure, so we want to give ourselves a little buffer. So maybe my action goal is to do 20 phone calls a month. Well, 20 phone calls a month requires 20 leads that are willing to get on the phone. So now we can turn around and go to marketing and say, okay, what steps in marketing are required to make sure I got 20 leads every month in this quarter? So you see how this works. So you kind of you move yourself backwards from the end result to what are the actions and the results along the way. Now let's go to the team members. If you have a team member And a team member doesn't have to be internal. It could be an outside vendor. So if you have a team member responsible for marketing, well, now you go to the marketing team member and you say, your metric that you need to hit is 20 phone calls scheduled on my calendar. Now, let's back in what is your action goal in order to get those 20 calls. So maybe their action goal is to have 2 podcast episodes a week instead of 1, or 2 posts a day on social media instead of 1, or add in 2 video posts instead of 5 basic still image posts. I'm not going to get into social media marketing right now, but basically the marketing person now knows what changes they have to make in the marketing to get the results required to provide you the leads required to get the revenue required. So now we can do the same thing with any team member. If a team member is responsible for customer service, well, let's look at their performance. How long are they spending on the phone with people? How happy are the people when they get off the phone? We can now take that information and give them new goals to make them better at their job. And in the process, you're lifting all tides. You are solving the problems that are occurring in your firm by making everybody better. And those are all leading to happier clients, client retention, referrals coming from clients, and on and on and on. So you can start to see how the goal setting process is the tipping of the first domino that's going to create a chain of events to happen in your firm, all for positive momentum. And with that, I'm going to summarize and close out this episode. So what we covered is that goal setting is crucial for the firm growth. And if you are serious about growing your firm, then I encourage you to take the time. It's going to take you some time. Take the few hours required or a whole day. Just clear your calendar, give yourself the space. It's already some days into the quarter. That's okay. Create some goals for the quarter and then move it down the line. You work backwards to create goals for all of the functions that are happening in your firm, and everybody should know what their goal is. One of the things that I like to do is I like to take the goal, write it out, and put it up on the wall where I'm looking at it all the time. And every single one of your staff members can have their goals up on the wall that they're looking at. And this way, they always know what they're aiming for. You should be able to stop somebody at the water cooler in the hallway, walk up to their desk and say, what are your Q3 goals? And they should be able to tell you right off the top of their head what their goals are. And then you should be able to say, how are we doing? Are we on track or not for those goals? And they should be able to report on that metric. They should always know that metric. They are responsible for that metric. And you, as the law firm owner, are responsible for your metric. You should always know what the revenue number is. You should always know what the profit number is as you proceed through the quarter and know how well or not well you're doing towards that goal. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope this information was great. And please come out into LinkedIn, Facebook. We have groups in both of them. Comment, let us know how we're doing on this podcast, and let me know what you think about this material. And I'd love to know what your goals are. So come in and share, and I will catch you on the next episode. Take care. Thank you for tuning into the Profit with Law podcast. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us, as well as helping us reach more people with this valuable content. Please leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast directory. Join us again next time when we are back with even more strategies to profit with law.